Welcome back to another review and feedback. We are still on our mech installments. This is game number 2 into those. If you do not like mech versus Zerg, or vice versa, and you don't want to learn about it, this is not the video for you. Otherwise, let's stick around and go through it. This is from Eftoo yet again. He is a GM, playing another player named Goya as a GM as well. And we're going to go ahead and see which flavor of mech that our wonderful Zerg player has to face, that our wonderful Terran player has chosen. And we're going to go through and see what we can get thrown. So as we both know, as we all know, not both, it's more than just you and me, it's everybody and their kiddo. You need to, they're going to do their GM level roughly, so they're going to be very strong with their builds. We want to be very on top of it. Apparently Goya was Terran. He decides to wall the low ground, which is another interesting decision. As you can see, the Zerg is sending over an Overlord, doing a normal expand. Nothing crazy. Getting gas and spawning pool in the right order. Ooh. Yep. Getting, I would have probably gotten gas before the pool, but this is a slightly different order. I think this pool was a couple earlier. The reason that you do gas first is so you can get speed as soon as your pool finishes. But if you don't want to do that, that's okay. But this is a slightly different build order from our Zerg player. Looks like they want to get some aggressive lings out. I think they made the decision as soon as it was random that they wanted to get across the map. This Overlord not being microed at all. Trying to get to that get to that pillar, get to the pillar, get to the pillar. Okay, lings got there in time. Perfect. So this started out as a marine opener. Maybe they had played before in the past. This is a GM level play. These kind of players play against each other very often. Kills the reactor, which takes forever to build, by the way. Reactors are 36-second build versus an 18 for your tech lab. 4 lings running around, SEV looking around, seeing what's going on. Lings getting so much money, so much value for what they do. See that the Hellion was coming across, decides to go back. And at this point, we're going to have creep spread at third base. He probably knows that it's mech because there's a cyclone being placed out. Third base on the high ground, getting ready to go out. This wall is not complete. Lings can get in. Just fair warning for those of you that decide to follow this build to some degree. This wall is not complete. You need to make sure that this is 1 hex forward and up. Or a supply depot is there, or what have you. Loses an Overlord. Slight supply cap. That's okay. Those happen. Hellions, you need 3 Hellions with regular flame to kill a worker. When you get blue flame, it's only 2. So you just need to be aware of the fact that Hellions need a minimum of 3 unless they have blue flame, and then you need a minimum of 2 to kill a worker. And that's the one it targets in the line, right? If all 3 intersect, and then of course the thing, that unit will die. So if you can get them all lined up in a straight line, awesome. Otherwise, not so great. This is a much more active Terran. We're going to slow this down so that we can actually watch what's going on. The Roach Warren is down, making it so that there's a smaller choke by the main door. This is going to be limiting for the Hellions to run by. This is a great way to make it so that your queens can create a wall. You usually want to put an Evo here as well. That way 1 queen, maybe 2 queens can plug it up, and that makes it very annoying for the Terran player who wants to do a run by. Generally speaking, that's what creep's good for. Look at that. The creep saw it, and then he took his lings and started attacking the units that were there. I don't know if I would have run by. That surround was possible. I'm not a GM, so there is some things where I'm a little bit too aggressive, and sometimes I'm not aggressive enough. That was probably an example. You can see they're killing off the creep tumors, which is quite annoying as a Zerg, because you need that to get that early vision that we were talking about the previous time. If you'd like me to repeat it, I can, but we're not going to this time because I don't need to do it 2 videos back to back. The Terran is expanding very quickly, is going more Battle Mech style. That's where you have Cyclones, Hellions, and those are the units that you're primarily using to pressure your opponent, keep them back, make it so that you are able to gather your third without any kind of pressure, and then expanding, keeping your opponent kept back on the number of bases that they're on, as few as you can. This map is an interesting map because there is a mineral wall and a building, a rock wall and mineral wall and rocks, a mineral wall. So as soon as you put bases on this side of that wall, you don't have to have any threat. You are much more protected generally, so you just kind of be aware that your opponent has to do extra effort to go through and get there. So as a Zerg player, you're very happy getting that base in that space. That being said, you do, as a Zerg player, want to continue to expand in all directions. That's what's going on here. The reason being is because creep. And the deeper you can make it so that your creep is, and the deeper you can make it to get to the heart of your tech, which you only have one of each building, the better. So it's the reason being that you do that is because then you have the ability to respond. You have more distance for them to travel under threat. You know it's coming. Ah, there it is. Look at that. That response was impeccable. Gets 2, 3, almost 4 Hellions. On the other side of the map is doing a ton of damage. Battle Mech is very much an aggressive unit style. You need to be on top of your opponent, all over the place, doing things. Hydra's already fighting. Roaches. So Hellions destroy. Okay, sorry. Hellions destroy Hydras. The reason being is Hydras are tagged as a light unit, if I remember correctly. So they can very much just walk through them, walk up to them and kill a whole bunch of them with a single line of fire when you have several... Ooh, don't want to shoot your own building. When you have several units that are attacking the same vicinity of Hydras. So you get like 2 or 3 shots off, you can kill like 10, 12 Hydras pretty easily. But there's a critical mass when the Hellions can't get close enough to do a couple line attacks, all that kind of stuff, but you just kind of have to be aware of it. As you can see, the Zerg is cleaning up run paths so that they are able to get to their opponent in a much more effective way. Hellions use the same run paths, so you got to be very careful, be very on top of your creep spread, which we're a little bit behind on creep, not crazy bad. Like, this is a few seconds here and there is going to make it so that you don't own the map. This is a nice run-by setup, so that way when they go for a distracting attack, they can obviously get in and do some more. And the run-by failed just because there was not another pressure point. As you can see, he's opening up these rocks for himself, I believe. Well, you'd have to be for yourself, right? But the point is that he's opening these rocks up so that he can make some moves happen. Checking for gold, all that good stuff. Nothing there. And then he's going to see that his opponent is moving out almost exactly as he goes in. For those of you that don't understand, okay, so this is like when you start to get really, really good at the game, you know that your opponent wants to expand at certain times in the game, depending on what build, what order of units they're building on, all that kind of stuff. Plus, you'll get experience with players. So, for example, if you've played me many, many times, you'll know that I have a problem in specific expansions. I'm not going to give you that information because I know some of you will play me. I'm very slow at it, or I'm way too fast at it. In this instance, what we're seeing is either Goya has played against Eftoo multiple times, and Eftoo knows that he wants to expand around 10 minutes, or that in the build order that he's seen, which is Battle Mech, you can see that he's got a lot of Cyclones. Cyclones are generally Battle Mech units, and you usually have Hellions combined with that, and you want to be all over the map. You want to be very aggressive with your opponent with that army. And you anchor your base with tanks while you're building up to a Thor count that's able to win. That's generally what you want to do with Battle Mech, and then you follow up. Once you get your tank Thor army, you go into BCs, or you continue to build Thor tank, depending on what your opponent does to counter and fight you. Regardless, when you see an opponent playing a specific style, a specific build, and you know that build, you can remember that you can learn the specific times, the feeling of when it's going to be there, or you can just memorize it straight up, which a lot of people just do. A lot of GMs just do. So what I think happened here is Eftoo knew that his opponent wants to expand by either the build order or because of experience playing Goya. And thus you could see him getting here as it's getting ready to land, killing some workers, all that kind of stuff. You can see how fast Battle Mech is. Very hard for a Zerg to engage against because they have all of those lock-ons. So you have to do multiple flanks as the Zerg, or you have to do a nice big push really heavily, just aggressively against it. And as you can see, value. Thor's microing out of Biles, which is hard to do, by the way. This Ling group did not do a run-by. I wish they had. That would have been so good if you just taken, while that army was fighting over here, taken these lings and just gone, whoop, let's go to the natural. And I think that's what that was set up for, but obviously things happened and didn't work out that way. Looks like this command center is also under attack again. Generally speaking, you want to repair that command center before you try and land it again. You can see some Hellions killed those lings that were hanging out over there. There just wasn't enough of them. But the reason being is command centers are kind of expensive. They're not the limiting minerals are not the limiting factor for Terrans in this situation, but generally speaking, you want to be kind of aware. Ooh, that's really expensive on both sides. Oh, go down. Okay, Thor went down. Not enough workers going down, but really good job with the tanking stuff. Nice. I like the block. I would after things cool down, check it, pull one up. You can see worker count way lower. It's down to 5 instead of 16. Command center's not present. No units on the expansion. Slight oversaturation, which is okay. Upgrades are not rolling, even though they have the money. Make sure that you are on top of that. We'll get back to that later, of course. 3-3 is very powerful. You want to make sure that you get it, if you can, as soon as possible. Basically, it makes your units more efficient, more effective, and more powerful to hit your opponent at. I think Red's slightly behind on their expansions with regards to this specific match. That being said, they did throw a large army at their opponent and did a really good job of knocking down their army and doing a lot of damage to them. So I can't really fault them. Oh, there's the expansion. Fault them for being a little bit late on their expansion. At this point, like after every time you do a really good victory, unless you're going to shut the game out right then and there, it's time for you to try and get that last expand behind it, so that way you can stay ahead. That tank line is so deep. Oh my god! But unfortunately, they're going to have to move forward because they killed out all the units on the tank line that was there to defend the third. A run by happened, not very many Cyclones, because all of those losses that we talked about earlier with that when I was looking at the oversaturation, not a big deal, just something to be aware of. And you can see that the Zerg player is now just starving out the Terran ever so slowly. Has a lot of bank still, so just be careful when you're doing this. Your opponent can surprise you with a whole bunch of Thors or a whole bunch of tanks or BCs or some kind of transition. In this instance, because there's already Hydras, they definitely have a large bank and not a large bank, large map control. I would be very careful with BCs if I went that way. 2 Hellions only with a nice defensive squad. I like it. I think at this point you could tell that these players have played each other. The pullback, that's the sensor tower, communicating everything. I don't know, that was not the best engage. We all know what a good engage looks like, but you know, we don't have to have perfect engages every time to take the W. Terran has resaturated their 3rd, has lifted their 4th, and cannot take it, and their 5th, their new 5th, which has an orbital attached, is going to the gold. Not a bad choice, just something to be aware of. Think about, why are they going gold? They need gas more than minerals, but they also are doing a lot of Hellion play. So now they have a lot of information. They're going to do a little run by. Army was out of position. This is a really smart by Goya. The downside is that he is caught, 1, and 2, he's not hitting critical infrastructure at this point. He's just opening up supply for additional units to be pushing him at, because, well, that's where we're at in this game. Yoink yoink. Wow, Viper play is good. Then using the Vipers to put Blinding Clouds, this army is kaput. So another option instead of Neural is grabbing Blinding Clouds with Vipers and yoinking your opponent's army of Thors in. That being said, we're still at a point where this army is, or this, the composition of blue is still rather strong, simply because they have enough units, a deep enough line of tanks that they could survive that. This is why you need to check your larva count every once in a while. So that way you know that you're able to afford grabbing, throwing away your whole army. So sometimes it's okay to wait until you have the larva, even if you don't, even if you have the money. In this instance, it was plenty for our F2 player, or the player F2, excuse me. Eftoo player, get it? But the larva is very, very important as a Zerg because of the implications of being able to build more or not being able to build more. Units all over the place, slowing down the Terran, making it so they can't expand, getting further and further behind. At some point, don't know when, this Terran is going to be considered starved out, and we'll go ahead and take that loss. Unfortunately, they're just trying to cope with this current situation. Really, really tough. I like the killing our own Ravager with its own bile. That was a good play. But the army composition and army grouping at this point, you could just build a bunch of lings in F2, almost your opponent. That is so many mules. If you have the time, which if you're not in combat essentially, you want to try and spread the mules out. You don't want any more than one mule to a mineral patch. Those mineral patches will disappear basically overnight. Not even that long because of that stuff. This is why you have queens at all your bases, so that when a run-by happens, you're not getting in this situation. Here's the second hit. You could see that was 2 hits. Gets 2 drones for his trouble, which is the equivalency in cash, like the expansion. But once you see Vipers, Liberators are not the play because they can just grip them. They go away, problem solved. But this is like there's a lot of army here. This is not great for our Terran. Another Blinding Cloud. I like the Liberators fighting the Vipers by their little AoE things. Widowmine doing damage. We didn't ever kill that base. This base is undersaturated for sure. Some of these units are gonna, all these mules are gonna die. Maybe make one trip back left out of them. Nope. But Battle Mech is a very aggressive, very active style, and then you want to be able to transition from it into something that your opponent cannot handle. BCs would be the transition eventually, or it's not necessarily eventually. Might be the transition. It just depends on how you want to play it, what you're kind of looking at, what you see, how your opponent responds, all that kind of stuff. Like if you see that they have spores everywhere, go for it. Don't go for BCs. Like that's silly. If you don't see any, no turrets or whatever, or you don't see any spores or cannons, then yeah, go ahead and make that switch. It's going to be really, really not fun for your opponent. And there's the GG. All right, that was a good game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So we're going to go chat. Hi. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. No, there wasn't really any ugly. That was, it was a pretty good game for both players overall. Money stack was really, really tall for the Zerg, but the larva injects were not present to support the continuous throwing away. Like, had the Zerg had more larva, I think that game would have ended a little bit earlier. That being said, I don't think they did anything drastically wrong. As for the Terran, they played a really good game, but they played a very aggressive style, and they weren't as aggressive as they should have been. Basically, if you go Battle Mech, if you're not on the map constantly, it means that you're losing. That's just, you just have to be on the map. You have to be doing damage. You have to be engaging. Because Cyclone's power is the lock-on, and every second that lock-on is on cooldown is time that you're losing damage. That is what that build really relies on. That being said, with the current expansion, the current model of choice that they went with the Cyclone, it's not as powerful as it used to be, and so the lock-on ability isn't as drastic as it will. For those of you that are aware, we are at the beginning of November. We're about to end the current season in a few days, if not tomorrow. I can't remember the exact date. It's like maybe next Tuesday, maybe tomorrow, or something like that. And the Cyclone is getting, the Balance Council changed it, and the Cyclone is going back to the way it was prior to, they made some changes. So the Cyclone's going to get, I think, a lot more powerful, if I'm not mistaken, for Battle Mech, explicitly. So just understand that this is on a different patch than you're going to probably be playing on if you watch this after basically a week or two. But you could see how both players worked. It was really cool. Low ground expand for mech again. That was very interesting to me. And they didn't wall-off with a command center. So it's like 2 different wall-offs, which is really cool to see as well. But thank you for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. And I look forward to having you on the next one. See ya.